All right, I'll check it and see if I can shoot. That's a sure. I was down there last
Yeah.
I'm from Northwest Southwest Virginia. It's all kind of the same. My family, I'm so
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Library of Virginia. My assistant wrote the Library of Congress, and I was where are we meeting? Honestly, I've been serving like passing it and I want to acknowledge Tia because she is the chair of the Library of Virginia Foundation. And the director of the foundation is right here, Scott. And he said, since his board chair is here and i.e. his boss, he ought to say a few words. So, Scott, thank you for allowing us to do this.
Oh, no problem. Glad that you could make it and come here and join us. My name is Scott Dodson. I'm the executive director of the Library of Virginia Foundation. Thank you guys for coming today. We really appreciate it. Sandra Treadway, the librarian of Virginia, is sorry that she missed everyone. She is actually in Norfolk today, helping the Norfolk Public Library System move forth a strategic plan. So she's doing important work around the state, but she was sorry that she couldn't say hello herself. For those of you that don't know and haven't been here before, which I heard from a couple of you when you were coming in, Library of Virginia is kind of like if you combined the Library of Congress and the National Archives into one institution and then had a history as long as the Commonwealth. So we have many, many items in the collection, over 140 million items. We reach around 3 to 4 million people, unique people every year through our web properties. And our collections contain documents ranging from mutual assurance policies on Mount Vernon to Mason's Declaration of Religious Freedoms. Did I get that right? I always confuse that with the Jefferson's Act of Religious Freedoms and Mason's Declaration of Rights. There we go. So I just wanted to welcome everyone. Thank you for coming. If you have any questions, feel free to seek me out. I've left a couple business cards out on the table outside and some broadsides as well if you'd like to learn more. But thank you so much again and enjoy your meeting. Yeah.
I just wanted to make one point for the record. One of the few things I can recall having come to the Secretary of Education was because the General Assembly, in its wisdom, gave the Secretary the decision of where the new state library is located. I was one to make a decision working with the city of Richmond that would be located here. And it's just a real honor for me to see how it was developed and grown and not just a meaningful part of downtown. First one,
Well, thank you. That's terrific. Great piece of history. Thank you for your service again as Secretary. Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to thank our legislators and all of our legislators who made meetings more simple because we can now do a certain number of meetings remotely. And we've had 2 or 3 of our members who, for health reasons, need to be online. Sarah, can you explain the Google Meet?
Absolutely, yes. We are using Google Meet for our meeting today, which is hybrid. We do have 2 members who've requested to participate remotely. That is Debbie Wynn and Todd Steifelmeyer. The meeting minutes will reflect that they both requested to participate electronically in accordance with the board's policy on electronic meeting participation. As a reminder, to ensure all members' votes are recorded accurately, we will do a roll call vote for the members who are participating electronically after a room call vote by this body, who is present here with us today. We do have members of the public observing, and I would just like to remind those members to please leave your phones, your devices on mute, so that we don't have any interruptions. For our 2 members who are participating electronically, please also keep yourselves on mute. We will have some folks monitoring. If you'd like to make comments, we certainly encourage participation, comments, and dialogue from our remote participants as well. If you could just remember, after the room call vote, we will do a roll call vote, Todd and Debbie, to make sure we get your reflections of that topic. When you speak, please do introduce yourselves. Again, we're going to record this meeting. We just want to make sure that the vote capture is accurate to the member who's speaking. If you've got questions or comments, again, please do use the chat feature, but just a reminder for members of the public who are observing the meeting, that is the opportunity for you today. And again, these proceedings will be recorded, so I think that's it.
Yeah, I'll just remind you, proceedings will be recorded and the mic is live. We have a separate conversation. It'll all be included. So Cody, would you please do the roll call?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Nancy Agee,
Here.
Delegate Terry Austin. Here. Senator George Parker.
Here.
Secretary Steve Cummings. Mr. Ben Davenport.
Here.
Mr. Jim Deck.
Here.
Mr. Haywood Fralin.
Here.
Ms. Leah Freeman. Speaker Todd Gilbert here. Ms. Eva Hardy. Senator Janet Howell. Delegate Terry Kilgore.
Here.
Mr. John King.
Here.
Delegate Barry Knight. Mr. Doug Wanarena.
Here.
Secretary Karen Merritt. Senator Frank Rupp.
Here.
Mr. Todd Stottlemyre.
Here.
Ms. Pia Tridiani.
Here.
Ms. Marilyn West. Mr. W. Wynn.
Here.
Madam Chairwoman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Cody. We have, as we always do, provided the public with an opportunity to come to provide public comment. Do we have anyone that will be providing public comment today?
Madam Chair, we had nobody who signed up ahead of time to make public comment digitally. However, we do have 3 members of the public who are present who would like to make public comment. And I can call them out in chronological order if you'd like.
That'd be great, thank you.
The first person that I do have signed up is Mr. Chris Kyle.
Chris, welcome.
It's great to be here this afternoon. I have just 2 minutes of comments. This is for an item that will come later in your agenda. What a beautiful building, the history here, and greetings from the Shenandoah Valley. Thank you, Chairman Agee, and members of this board for your willingness to reconsider for full funding the item I'm about to discuss. We recognize that doing so is a departure from protocol, but we believe so strongly in the merits of this proposal that it warrants your reconsideration. As you'll see from the team we have brought today, This speaks to our commitment, not just to Region 8, but to the many nursing employers that will benefit within our region from this grant and outside of our region. So what's the need with nursing here in Region 8? We maintain a persistent shortage of nurses in Virginia, a shortage that is particularly prevalent in the northern Shenandoah Valley. This shortage represents a risk not just to the health system, but also to those in need of long-term care, urgent care, pediatric care, rehabilitation services, and preventative care. The list goes on. Training of new homegrown nurses is the bottleneck for us. Shenandoah University's request for the Next Gen Nursing's proposal aims to make a long-term investment to build the capacity in the nursing workforce for us, to build a pipeline and beyond that will create a replicable model that could be used elsewhere in the Commonwealth to address this critical nursing shortage. You can see the ask that we have. It's in your board package. As you know, the original project requested $190,000 for part-time nurse precept contractors. I'll say it again, part-time nurse precept contractors. That's a mouthful. The project award eliminated this critical need. That's why I'm here today. That's why the next two speakers are going to speak. This project was approved unanimously by Region 8 Council and fully funded. The partial funding removed the project at the time. The partial funding removed from the project at the time of the award was intended to procure the contract services of the part-time nurse contractors, with 100% of those funds ending up in the pockets of retired nurses who agreed to return to work as part-time contractors, serving as these preceptors. None of the funds requested in this grant budget were allocated for salaries of employees of a health system or university. Without full funding, unfortunately, this project becomes infeasible. Therefore, we respectfully request your reconsideration of the request to restore the full amount of funding of $190,000. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chris.
Madam Chair, the next speaker is Marguerite Mann.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Chairman Agee and members of the Virginia Growth and Opportunity Board for your willingness to reconsider this important funding opportunity for increasing the nursing workforce in Virginia. The $190,000 that was eliminated from the approved grant would not just benefit a single employer in Virginia, but instead would benefit the Region 8 general public by increasing access to care, both now and in the future. It would benefit regional healthcare workforce by helping to reduce the present burden that clinical training requirements put on an already overextended workforce, while also helping to build capacity for a future workforce pipeline that can better meet the capacity needs of our region. The grant will also, or the funding would also benefit Valley Health and Region 8 healthcare providers by providing part-time contractors to supplement their salaried nursing workforce, while also training a future nursing workforce that will benefit all healthcare employers in the region and beyond, which have been highly impacted by the near and long-term effects of the coronavirus. Finally, Shenandoah University would be benefited by providing access to additional preceptors for their nursing students, which in turn will help to accelerate the time to market and help to maintain nurses in our region post-graduation. The $190,000 that was allocated in the Next Gen Nurses Grant for contract services to build a regional workforce capacity in the healthcare sector was much like the fully funded Region 2 Virginia Tech Workforce Training and COVID-19 Response Grant. On that project, which was also an ERR request, grant funding was used to help support trainee stipends and personnel. This funding ultimately helped to provide internships and jobs for 36 individuals, thus creating a pipeline of laboratory employees with COVID testing experience. Much like that project, the Next Gen Nurses Project, if fully funded, has the potential to develop a sustainable pipeline of nurses for Region 8 and a replicable model for solving the nursing shortage that can be leveraged across the Commonwealth. We urge you to reconsider the full funding amount of the Next Gen Nurses Project and make a long-term investment to build capacity in the nursing workforce pipeline while also creating a replicable model. Thank you.
Madam Chair, the last speaker that we had signed up is Mr. Mark Merrill.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman. And I'd like to extend my appreciation for especially the delegates and senators who are serving. And Speaker Gilbert, it's nice to see you in a different capacity. My name is Mark Merrill. I'm a retired healthcare executive, having served for almost 10 years as CEO of Valley Health System located in Winchester, Virginia. But for disclosure, I have no relationship with the organization today. But I'm here to speak on behalf of the Next Gen project. I think there's no doubt that our country is facing significant challenges with workforce. And I would submit there are no areas greater need than teachers, mental health workers, and nurses. These areas are critically important to our social infrastructure and to our healthcare systems, and the need to attract a well-trained, qualified, competent workforce is absolutely critical. I applaud Governor Youngkin for his recent announcement about what he's doing to deal with the teacher shortage, to bring back people into pathways for teachers into the classrooms to deal with the shortage. A nurse is not just a nurse, and I feel a little bit humble speaking in front of a professional nurse like Chairman Agee. But in addition to the academic rigor that a nurse must require, they need to have content knowledge, they need to have critical thinking skills, technical skills like wound management, OR, ICU management, placement of lines and things of this sort, drug titration. They need to understand the whys, not just the connections, but why are things happening to patients that they do, and how do they also intervene on behalf of patients to save lives and promote health. The role of the clinical expert nurse is critical to advancing the workforce in nursing. Not only do they mentor novice nurses who have recently graduated, but they participate in quality improvement, they investigate adverse events, they deal with staffing, they perform performance improvement, they even cover shifts, and they also train students who are in nursing school, which we do with Shenandoah, Eastern Mennonite, Shepherd University, Laurel Ridge Community College, and JMU. So we seek, and when I was at Valley Health, the broadest pipeline possible to promote nurses. Unfortunately, the pandemic thinned the reservoir of these expert nurses, and the demands on the expert nurses have continued to escalate with the smaller supply. The Next Gen proposal will allow us to bring in retired nurses who have great clinical expertise, bring them in to preceptor the new nurses so that they can develop their competencies and not just be able to function on the floor, but really to understand the role that they have. We've had several successful collaborations with Shenandoah University and the Department of Health in our region. One was creating a career and technical education pipeline for high school students. If you ask high school students healthcare careers, they say doctor, nurse. We tried to expose high school students to pharmacy, respiratory, engineering, housekeeping, food service, medical records, technology, finance, and we have been recognized by the state to do this pipeline to get kids involved with healthcare careers. Shenandoah, the Department of Public Health, and Valley Health also participated in one of the most successful vaccine clinics that was conducted in the Commonwealth. This partnership was exceptional, and we believe the Next Gen model would be replicable across the Commonwealth, that we would be able to share our expertise with individuals across the state, other health systems, and organizations. So this program will benefit, certainly it will benefit SU, it will benefit Valley Health, it will benefit physician practices, public health, school nurses, federally qualified health centers, and other organizations that need nurses. Finally, as you saw in the proposal, both Valley Health and Shenandoah University have made financial commitments to make this a reality of roughly $350,000 that these organizations are committing to the program on top of the request that we had for Go Virginia for the $500,000. So again, I greatly appreciate your willingness to entertain a consideration of this decision, and I urge that you restore full funding for the Next Gen program and hope to improve the health of the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Good to hear our former CEOs still talking about nursing. You're waiting words, fella. So do we have any written comments?
No, ma'am.
And we will take this up a little later on the agenda, as you know. But I would like to move to the consent agenda. Before I do that, Cody, I just want you to recognize we had a Chairman Knight and Secretary Merritt come in. I think we got that.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, it's Secretary Cummings, I'm sorry. So before we move into the consent agenda, I have a couple of announcements. Firstly, I would like to extend a warm welcome to our new board member, John King. John is the president of the Virginia Poultry Growers Cooperative, a Virginia company that employs over 500 employees and has over 200 grower members. John has nearly 30 years of experience in sales, marketing, finance, and business management with both large and small public and private companies. He serves on several industry-related committees and boards, such as the National Turkey Federation, the Virginia Poultry Federation, and the Center for Rural Virginia. Welcome, John.
Glad to be here and, the board contributing. It's been part of good reading since the inception. Since I've been going to this, I'm involved for Region 8 committee. But, so I'm very familiar with the program. I'm looking forward to get the ground on.
And we would also like to thank Robin Sullenberger, who's turned in and his service expired, but he was a long time member. We also just heard earlier this week that Joe Wilson has submitted his resignation. I think everybody knows Joe, and he was a charter member of GOVA, Virginia. Unfortunately, he has a family illness and wishes to submitted resignation effective immediately. And we will let the speaker know about that. Moving on now to some really exciting news. The USEDA recently made a round of grant announcements that demonstrate the leverage Go Virginia grants can provide. Go Virginia has come to a point where we have enough maturation where we can see to some extent the outcomes of the work we've done. And we talk a lot about how Go Virginia has facilitated entities or regions to work together. We're also seeing lots of evidence of the economic development that Go Virginia has done. And these awards that we just got representing $65.5 million in federal funds, totally aligned with our Go Virginia goals, and it's the Go Virginia work that catalyzed these. Let me tell you 3 of them. Firstly, in the Hampton Roads area, the Hampton Roads Workforce Council in Region 5 won an $11,006,941 grant to build regional talent pipelines for in-demand blue economy, clean energy, and related cybersecurity jobs. This project was supported by large employers, including the Newport News Shipbuilding and Indian Energy. Secondly, Activation Capital, leading the advanced pharmaceutical manufacturing cluster. And you remember that we had a presentation about this 1 or 2 meetings ago. This coalition in Region 4 will receive a $52.9 million grant to expand the domestic supply chain for essential medicines and pharmaceutical ingredients. Incredibly exciting. Activation Capital received the Go Virginia grant that started last year. Within that cluster scale-up of investment strategy to accelerate the growth of emerging pharmaceutical manufacturing. This recent EVA board announcement just shows how you targeted investments to truly grow an industry cluster. And thirdly, Longwood University Real Estate Foundation in Region 3 is receiving a $1.9 million grant to support construction of an innovation hub featuring co-working space, business consulting services, and educational training facilities. So it's pretty exciting to use some Virginia money to get federal dollars back. Right? Very exciting time. Really pleased and happy to report that to you. Any questions? Well, you have a consent agenda. We have 4 items included in today's consent agenda. You've got the details in your packet. Are there any questions or would anyone like to?
May I say something about what you just shared?
Of course you may.
The Build Back Better grant is transformational, and the Petersburg region, as many of you know, is vitally important, not only to the region, but to our government. And so he has aligned many agencies from across the government And it's an all-of-government approach to building out Hooters. But a key part of that is the pharmaceutical cluster. And Go Virginia was there ahead of everyone else, ahead of us. And you were there, and so we're building off of that work. And I believe this is going to help other stakeholders understand the role of Go Virginia and the potential for action. And so I want to commend Go Virginia for this early stage investment that is now definitely growing beyond 5 to 10 months. Thank you very much.
Very exciting.
So consent agenda, anyone want to take anything off of the consent agenda?
Madam Chairman, I would move that D3.
Consent, we have a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And Cody,
Madam Chair, we have to do a roll call vote.
yes.
I'm gonna call, each name individually. Ms. Agee.
Oh, I thought we were just going to do two of them.
Just the individuals who are participating electronically. Sorry about that.
Then, Mr. Stottlemyre
Aye.
and Mr. Nguyen. Mr. Nguyen.
Well,
Sorry,
thanks, Debbie. Every year at our September board meeting, we need to elect new officers for the Go Virginia board. And I would like to turn it over to Brian for nominations and election of chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have a chair and a vice chair to elect, so, first thing we would ask is there not, I'm not open the floor for nominations for chair, and at this point, is there a nomination, for chair?
I'd like to move this week.
Thanks, Jay, he's been nominated.
that.
Second.
Close the nomination.
There's a motion to close nomination, and we have a second.
You're a railroad captain.
All right, so let's do it like this. Is there a motion to accept, Mrs. Nancy Agee as chair by acclamation? And the second of that, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Mr. Nguyen?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Stottlemyre?
Aye.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Now, let's go back to vice chair. I would love to open the floor for nominations for Phil Country. For nominations for vice chair.
That's nominate Todd.
Thank you, Todd Solomar, and the second. Are there any other nominations?
Move nomination be closed.
All righty. All those in favor of Todd Solomar, he, by the way, I'm sorry he isn't here today, but he is doing terrific work behind the scenes, really working hard, so. Todd, are you willing and able to accept this nomination?
Since you did.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And Mr. Nguyen
Aye.
and Mr. Stottlemyre.
I never vote for myself, but I guess aye.
We're going to say it's unanimous.
All right.
Thank you.
Right.
Sarah, we'll turn over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. If we could advance the slide for me, please. Thank you. Okay, so we received 4 applications in August of this year as part of this past quarter's application cycle for new and existing members. As a refresher, we have 4 application cycles on the quarter and to coincide with our quarterly board meeting. They were all per capita regional implementation projects. And 3 of them were resubmittals. These were applications that were deferred at the last meeting, and staff has been working with the applicants in further refining and developing their proposals, which is what you see here today. As part of the full review and evaluation, we formed work groups. Thanks to those who participated in 1 or more of those work groups. Those work groups typically include no more than 2 board members for obvious reasons, and subject matter experts, many of whom come from our sister agencies, really working to make sure that we're aligning resources and strategies and intention around Go Virginia's goals. A few of the members who participated in the May work group included Jim Dyke, Leah Freenow, Pia Trigiani, Joe Wilson. Subject matter experts this round included Annie Arnest, who's with the Industrial Revitalization Fund Program at DHCD, Sean Avery, President and CEO of the Hampton Roads Workforce Council, Brady Deal, Project Manager at VDAX, Conaway Haskins, Vice President of the Virginia Innovation Partnership Corporation, Debbie Melvin, Assistant VP Talent Solutions at DEDP, Mary Miller, former Director of RAMP Regional Accelerator, and Stephen Burson, Manager also with VDAX. After the presentation for each application type, Madam Chair, we'd like to call for a vote. We'll start with these projects per capita implementation. The first one is coming to us from Region 9. This is a resubmission. We're going to start with the workforce development investment category. Remember, there are 4 investment priorities currently for Go Virginia: talent development, sites and infrastructure, cluster scale up, and startup ecosystem and innovation is the 4th. So this one's in the workforce development category. The Central Virginia Partnership for Economic Development is requesting $307,800 to retain college graduates and help them launch their careers in Central Virginia, and also to provide a talent pipeline for employers in the technology sector or technology-enabled industries as identified in their growth and diversification plan. They are going to work with a team of undergraduate work study students led by an experienced staff member, a talent director, and they are going to work to raise local awareness raise awareness among students of local employment opportunities. These students will serve as thought leaders who are going to be ambassadors, creating a bridge from the campus directly into employers. They're going to be working with the regional chamber and the technology council as well to strengthen those relationships, and again, really focus on retaining those students. At the last pass, and Mr. Dyke will remember this, we were really challenging them to include community colleges. The resubmission does indeed include a commitment from the 2 community colleges operating in this region. Outcomes during the grant period. And just as a reminder, Go Virginia grants are 2 years funded, but our intention is to make investments that are going to be sustained and really build new capacity. So we always expect to see results beyond the life of the grant. But during the grant period, 55 new jobs created, translation students captured, who perhaps would have left the region and certainly considered leaving Virginia. 100 businesses served during that period. This application and its resubmission included a lot of commitment from local businesses, which staff felt was very positive, and further, a lot of participation from the local governments in the form of cash, which is our most meaningful and obvious form of local participation. And that came through a joint investment through the Regional Economic Development Organization, which all provide funding. And they are specifically directing their resources towards this initiative. They did address all the questions posed by the work group and the DHCD staff. And based on that, we are recommending the approval of this project. Okay. Yes, you have a question, please.
Will there be a baseline of how many they've been able to keep in region prior to?
Yes, we have definitely asked that question. The good news is the Economic Development Organization is operating outside of the university. There's a similar initiative happening inside the university system. So that's going to, I think, create that baseline data. One of the other outcomes or products, if you will, is this initiative proposes to actually do some survey work. So to collect some primary data about why students would or would not consider staying in Central Virginia or the Commonwealth, which I know is an issue that a lot of folks are thinking about. So I think it will bring some new insight to this topic area.
So we'll try to track incremental jobs to reach that.
I guess so.
So I have another question. This is partly to help me understand more how we work. My observation is that in the Virginia Community College system, when you are on the non-credit side, which is fast forward credential, there's a real lack of resources aimed at career development, job placement, how to write a resume, how to do an interview and whatnot. Would there be anything out of this program that could become like a playbook for them to develop that? Because I think this is an important element that's missing from our community colleges.
It wasn't stated specifically, but I will say based on the program design, some of the professional skill building, networking, I haven't seen anything as technical as resume writing, for example, but I do think that the program partners would definitely be willing to entertain the development of a type of playbook, if you will.
I can speak to that. I can tell you that the system, I mean, the interim change last year in March is developing a plan for the whole 23 community college system to become their workforce. So you will be hearing much more shortly. And focus also on the more support for non-credit courses. So absolutely.
Yeah.
There are a lot of pieces to it. I mean, this has kind of been part of the community college system, and now you kind of on your own. And it's not right. If what we're trying to do is build our work. So, no, it's a very good plan.
And just to feed back into the system what we learned from this and what's like. And of course, we're working out across the cabinet on this Secretary of Labor and Secretary of State. So that's it.
It's also important that actually focusing on those kind of mistakes really needs to start in K-12 to me as well. Which is through, you can't start to. This, I mean, obviously, this appears the University of Virginia led. It would be interesting to know what part of the University of Virginia and it's actually being heavily supported by those professors that are.
Sure.
I do think.
Yeah, what's interesting, Mr. Davenport, is the applicant here is actually the Regional Economic Development Organization. And I think it really is it speaks really to the urgency of this issue to see an organization that was not typically working in this space really feel a need on behalf of existing businesses and also funders to make sure that this talent is not leaving the region. But they are working very closely with UVA. They are very focused at this time on technology, so computer science. I would say that's probably the school. We did ask about connections with some of the other SHEV-funded internship initiatives because, work experience is a big part of the strategy to retain students. And those interests seem to be very well aligned in this application.
Other questions? Go to the next one.
Good, thank you. The next one is a new project. This is coming to us from Region 2. And the applicant is Virginia Tech's Computer Science Department. They're requesting $175,000 and bringing an equal amount of match, including some local match, $12,500. This is going to create CS Root, which they really envision as an entrepreneur hub led by the department I've indicated with the Virginia Tech Office of Research and Innovation, the Corporate Research Center, and the Roanoke Blacksburg Technology Council. They are going to focus on the pre-launch phase for technical founders, which is a very simple way of saying we want more Doug Wanerinas that start their businesses and save and grow in Region 2. But really that is the focus here. How do we create student entrepreneurs and connect them to all of the assets and resources that the Roanoke Valley has to offer? They're going to focus on technical advisors to move business concepts forward, connect them to existing resources in the region. So again, not building a duplicative or redundant system, but really just to create more of a transitional support system to get students off campus and close to start and growing their business. One thing that I felt was unique about this application is they are going to have not just a technical advisory group to build this mentor network for students, but they're also having a locality advisory group, which is really an opportunity for local economic development directors to understand the life cycle of a firm developing through this type of process. And again, to increase the likelihood that that firm will get established in the Roanoke Valley or the New River Valley. They are proposing this will create 24 jobs during the grant period, 4 new businesses, engage over 200 entrepreneurs, and engage 40 new mentors. And really the development of this mentor network specific to these types of enterprises working with students, I think we've seen as a best practice throughout the Commonwealth where these mentor networks can be developed and connected. Based on that, staff is recommending this project for approval.
Madam Chairman, Sarah, Laurel County is obviously the biggest community, part of that community. Why are they not?
You know, I can't speak to that specifically. The localities you see here, though, Botetourt, I know their economic development director, you know, personally, last week, I think is really leaning in and seeing this as a strategy. So I can't speak. I would not want to speak to why or why not the counties. Not here.
I don't know the answer to that either. Frank, it's a good one. Also, Salem's absent from this list, as is Blacksburg. But I think these are just some of the examples of participants because all of those entities participate in the Roanoke Blacksburg Technology Council, and that's really taken off. So that's got a huge number of participants, businesses, and government leaders and so on. That may or may not be an answer.
It just stuck out.
Can I add to that? Many of these startups they'll go through an incubation phase and they'll end up at the Ramp Accelerator, which is located both in Blacksburg and downtown Roanoke. So I think that, you know, this is a kind of the feedstock, the top of the funnel, let's say, and the whole ecosystem that exists in the Roanoke Valley and the New River Valley will be involved in one way, shape, form, whether it's funding, whether it's mentorship, whether it's, you know, professional advice, that sort of thing. So I think it'll be.
And again, Senator, I do think that the advisory committee made of local government representatives, which was very unique to this project, will create some more opportunities. Okay. Next slide. Region 7, Accelerate 2023-2024. This is a resubmission. This is really a project. The applicant is George Mason University. They're requesting $532,000 to strengthen and advance really Northern Virginia as a center of excellence for innovative and emerging technologies. Really looking to promote economic growth and accomplish one of the goals of the Go Virginia program, diversification through innovative new business formation. It is a year-long process, and this is actually a 2-year request, engaging tech entrepreneurs, investors, and other ecosystem partners. It does culminate in an event, which was actually held last year called Accelerate 2022. I think with a fair amount of success for the first year out. The conference convenes angel and venture investors in Region 7. And I really would call the culminating event an investors conference. So all of the other programming that occurs during the year is designed to develop and prepare entrepreneurs, early stage businesses to be successful in receiving some attention from these types of investors. Participating localities in this application include Arlington, Fairfax, and Prince William. At the end of the grant period, this project proposes to create 100 new jobs, generate on behalf of the participating founders $50 million in total capital raised, and engage 80 to 120 entrepreneurs. This project was deferred. The match was not qualified at that time. The match has subsequently been qualified, and we are seeing investors, companies like Miter, for example, and some fairly large name firms in Northern Virginia throwing some attention and weight behind this initiative. We further saw a refinement of some of the outcomes. And finally, in the pitch call this second time around, we did learn of a nexus, if you will, between some work happening with Virginia Innovation Partnership Corporation and the statewide network of accelerators. And accelerators, of course, are physical places or systems, if you will, that help businesses grow quickly when they're ready to grow. And the applicant proposes that this event would be open to companies that are involved in accelerators in other parts of the Commonwealth. This is important because in some areas, particularly rural areas, there is not enough critical mass to attract investors of this type to South Side, to Southwest. And so by allowing the firms that have the most potential for growth to participate in an event like this, it's really going to give them some exposure and hopefully access to capital they can then take back home to support and grow their businesses. So overall, very positive, and we are recommending this project for approval. Thank you. Next one. The next one is also resubmission, Carver Food Business Incubator. This is Region 9. Culpeper County is requesting some funds to support and scale a food and beverage manufacturing incubator, if you will. And they have identified this as a key strategy. Beverage and food manufacturing in Region 9 is one of their targeted industries. They are aiming to build a community kitchen, which is currently under construction, providing specialized equipment. They're going to use Go Virginia funds to expand further these food and beverage manufacturing opportunities, including supplemental education offerings on business operations, scaling, access to capital, etc. Some of the challenges I think we had as staff with the application last time around was a lack of commitment from companies that would be using the space, and they came forward with a much more impressive list of producers and value-added food manufacturers that really have a desire to grow their businesses and ultimately, build a business that can operate outside of the Commonwealth, which is consistent with Go Virginia goals. The outcomes are listed here. We also had some conversations about defining those outcomes, the number of new jobs created, businesses served, et cetera, and actually increasing revenue for the companies that they're working with. This project did also receive an IRF grant. So full disclosure, we ran the return on investment with the total state investment, as is our practice, and not positive at year 3, but positive at year 5. And we were, I think, really impressed with the business plan and the thought that they put into their sustainability strategy. We recommend this one for approval as well.
So is there further discussion about any of the projects that you just heard relative to the per capita applications? Yeah, motion to approve. Thank you, Jerry. Oh, we don't need to do the roll call. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. And Cody, could you please answer?
Mr. Stallmeyer,
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen,
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. Thank you, Sarah.
All right. I'm going to refer you to your board packet and specifically to page 23, okay, which is a memo from staff. At the June meeting, Next Gen Nurses Project was submitted on behalf of Shenandoah University by the Region 8 Council. The application submitted requested a grant amount of $496,000. After review by staff and work group, staff recommended funding the project at a reduced level of $306,000, which excluded the funding request for contract nursing staff, preceptors, and Valley Health. I just want to remind everyone too, this was a grant type, the Economic Resilience and Recovery Program, which was created specifically to provide an allotment of funds for regions to deal with the economic impact of the pandemic. And that program was established to expire, and in fact did, on June 30th, 2022. In reviewing the application with work group, we interpreted this request as benefiting a single employer, specifically that $190,000, and therefore not an appropriate use of Go Virginia funding. The board approved the project at the staff recommended amount. As you've heard from the public comments and the letter submitted, Region 8 has requested that the board reconsider that decision. Staff did meet with the region and the applicant for the purpose of completing the contract for the awarded amount. And they did not want to move forward at that time with the award amount as decided in June and requested some consideration by this body. We have presented to you as staff 3 options. There may be others. But based on our interpretation of the enabling legislation, existing board policy, and precedent, these are the 3 options that we would put by the board for consideration. The first would be to maintain the level of funding approved by the board at the June 14th meeting. The second would be to, in effect, amend the initial decision and increase the amount to $190,000. But because the project was originally funded under the ERR initiative, those funds are no longer available. In fact, we couldn't even extend the program because they were involved in part of the recapture that occurred at the end of this past fiscal year. Therefore, we're recommending 2 options. Allow Region 8 to use their per capita allocation to fully fund the project. Or 2, consider allowing the funding to come out of the statewide competitive fund, which again is a pool of resources really designed for a special purpose, significant economic impact. But based on our interpretation again of the enabling legislation, existing board policy, the board does appear to have discretion to choose that option as well. So, Madam Chair, that's what we'd like to present to you today.
So there's probably nothing that I think more about day and night than nurses and the need for them. So I'm very conflicted, frankly. I understand all the multiple ways that the governor's office, Secretary of Hotels, done a great job of cataloging all the different options right now. And lots of innovation going on. It's clear we do need more nurses. And I think we talked about that in June, and I was really pleased to move this forward. Although we did seem to be benefiting only one location, and suggested that a smaller amount, people could do a smaller amount of project with their SIM center and get some more local support. You've heard the wonderful folks, and including my good friend Mark Merrill, talk about this need, but they would like us to increase the number of 109,000. Complicated for governors to do that, and Sarah has given us 3 options. I would love to entertain any comments or questions.
Madam Chair, I'm certainly conflicted as well. The guy most likely to have my next medical emergency about health.
Down to you.
So I'm all for that. I have it on standby while we're at it. But so my question would be, and I view this a little bit. I'm trying to take my conflicted hat off and my local hat off. Try to look at this objectively. There are some parts of Virginia you want to, well, every part of Virginia, you want to turn your lights on. You got one entity that you turn to, whether it's Dominion or your co-op or whatever. Similar lack of competition in cable, fence, risks, etc. But so if you're going to go to the hospital, Warren County, Page County, Shenandoah County, Westchester, Bergen County, you're going to Valley Health. There's a hospital. They have a hospital at each one of those places. And so I just wonder if there's anything unique about that distinction that sets it apart from the traditional focus on a single business since they do occupy that kind of unique space? I'm asking Sarah mostly.
Sure. We don't have any precedent for this type of investment. There were some examples cited in the letter, provided by the region that, and Go Virginia funds have been used to support salaries, but typically, in fact, perhaps always, with the applying entity, which in this case is Shenandoah University, not a third party. So I hear you, but just the fact that they're operating multiple facilities could perhaps put them in a different category of employer, and that would certainly be, you know, the board to consider. These funds would be used by Valley Health to hire nurse preceptors who would be contractors. The model here is to recruit retired nurses to replace some of the nurses that they lost during the pandemic, and that was fairly clear in the feedback loop questions. There had been perhaps 30, I don't remember the exact number of preceptors, and that number had dropped dramatically, and this was really a part of Valley Health strategy on behalf of the initiative to help rebuild that, that bench strength, if you will. But these nurses would be providing direct patient care in addition to providing the supervision required for the clinical rotations of the nurses that are enrolled.
Sure. Just to follow. So I guess my question is anything staff's funding changed back to the or to that additional funding as far as, I mean, you've given us some options, but maybe not a recommendation. I know it seems like the recommendation previously was that it didn't fit our criteria because of the single employer. I guess has anything changed?
No, it has not changed.
I'll speak up for Sarah and say that in the conversation I encouraged her to look at any options.
I see. All right. That's what I was wondering, Madam Chair, how we got to all of a sudden. And I appreciate the, you know, giving it the old college try. And again, I appreciate the options. I'm just still listening and trying to figure out where we stand.
I think if we decide to approve it, which was the better way, Region 8 using their per capita or statewide? I'm trying to, I'm back and forth with this one back.
I think it's reasonable to allow Region 8 to consider bridging the gap. There was $300,000 approved from ERR funds, and those were originally statewide competitive funds. So the statewide competitive fund has provided resources to support this project.
I think, I was just thinking that might be a better way to compromise on this, is allow Region 8 to use, if that's what they want to do, allow them to use their funds statewide, and that way everybody gets a little bit.
Thank you, Barbara.
Yeah, the legislative here is sort of getting involved on this issue here, and related to the speaker here, and we're talking about Valley Health and the provider in that area. It's actually, it gets more patients from West Virginia than it does from Virginia. So because, you know, they don't have, in West Virginia, they don't have a lot of services that are there. There used to be a couple small hospitals in the eastern part of the panhandle, and West Virginia. One of them, I think, started together. I'm not sure. So they're catering to a larger population and what the population that they're on business has to work. There are also a couple other things that I think are significant that we probably should be aware of. Preceptors have been around for a long time, but just in the last few years, there's been a real shortage of preceptors throughout Virginia. So it's not just one area of Virginia. And it's some of the less densely populated areas, and some of the ones that had difficulty being able to get students in before they're provided, you know, get paid as a regular salary and everything. And if you don't do that, then you're not going to be able to get as many jobs. We do have last year we started out with about $500,000 in the state budget for preceptors for nurses. And so we actually are funding it out of the state fund right now. that kind of a general basis throughout the Commonwealth. But the other thing is, as soon as we put the money in the budget for doing preceptor for nurses, the clinical psychologists and all the others said, well, we got shortages too, so we're gonna, yeah, so we're gonna have to deal with these types of issues for a variety of different ways. And I don't know whether how that stacks up as it relates to this specific project, but there are clearly some needs that are there. And, you know, I think it's at least legitimate to look at sort of how we can and take at least some small steps to try to help deal with them.
Yes.
I'm reading, obviously, this is for the first time we've got this part of working with, but I think W2 was a suggestion. Greg, you on another level, one of the things we're also trying to work on is improving the relationship between the region and the state board and recognizing that the region should have some decision-making authority. And if they're willing to put up their own money, I think we need to basically respect that. If that's what they want to do, and it's not doing something else that they want to pay. If there's a benefit in doing that, I think it is a reasonable compromise here. But that's just my
With Nancy, I like you am very aware that there's a critical nursing shortage, not only this is something that better seem worse. I was involved in the original work group here, and at the time, Sarah, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the offer was made at that time for the locality to use its capital funds and fund the monies here. So I think that was good. That appeared to be given all along, and there was the decision not to do that. But my greatest fear is that if we were to fund preceptors for one hospital system, we would fund preceptors for all hospital systems. I don't think that was the intent of GOVA agenda. So I do worry about that, but I have the greatest sympathy towards the nurses. It is critical. And it's not getting better.
Ms. John?
Being a new member, I know my usual motto is observe and learn at first meeting. But having come off of Region 8 and being involved in the discussion, thought it'd be perfect just to at least give some insight on the discussion. And, you know, I think everybody's made great points. This is a difficult decision because it is such a critical area. You know, the Region 8 is such a large geographical footprint. And I think healthcare in that area, while it looks to be say Winchester and what have you, I think that's true in this case for some of the times, but there are a number of people that travel in the valley to see certain specialists because they can't just go down the street. So I understand the perspective of the people that was benefit an organization, and that's part of this. I'm originally from Richmond, so I have a unique perspective on that challenge in the valley. But I think one of the biggest things that has happened in Region 8 is we've turned a lot of our discussion. Go Virginia, having been involved at the beginning, has funded outstanding programs throughout the state, and particularly in workforce development in those areas. The concern that we have turned our attention to it, and the bodies that built this, we certainly don't want to just put anybody in there. Then we took that and said, okay, well, the most recent comments from the governor was, how do we cut through red tape? How do we do this to move things along without compromising, in this case, patient care, quality, and such things? And I know that we can all go out and look at any number of studies that shows how the workforce is much stronger than it was pre-COVID. And so the question becomes, particularly when you get into the experience levels, you know, a recent study showed that someone who got COVID that was 65 or older, which is a great deal of experience, was something like, I don't remember this specific number, significantly more likely to be out of the workforce a year later. But even the younger population was the same way. And so the question is how do we take what I call the brain drain for some of this experience and coax them back into the workforce in order to expand this nursing. And that's really what changed our thinking in Region 8 was, you know, how do we make these programs more successful? Because there are good programs out there, and we just don't have enough people to get into those programs. We saw this as an opportunity to benefit a larger number of organizations by taking experience.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Ben.
Well, you know, I think we built in a system of checks and balances when this organization was put together. And if this council wants to do this, then, you know, they're directing what they feel like is the biggest priority. I mean, we have our own, every one of us has a different idea about what the big priority ought to be for our region. They said, and they have been pretty consistent. I remember when, a long time ago, when I visited there, and that was what they were talking about then. So, I mean, I think that, that we don't have to worry about just creating a tidal wave in the organization. And every council is going to make its own decision from the very.
Yes.
I'm hearing my colleagues over here talk and everyone here. What I'm kind of concerned about is setting the precedent. You know, because I heard Mr. Fralin say, think here in W. Gilmore said that, and the need and what everyone's saying, I could probably hold my nose a little bit and vote for region money, but I've had an awful hard time voting for the statewide money because I do believe it sets a precedent. I do believe it's camel's nose under the tent. I think everyone else is going to comment on that.
Thank you for that. Let me just remind us that this was, the full request was 487,000 something in that neighborhood. So this is reducing it a bit, but the simulation center and those pieces we had already approved to fund. So I think some of the pushback also could have been, can you do a smaller program to do it in a different way to get others that would be interested. So what I heard, I'm gonna just ask you, go for it, is that a motion?
I think I'd make a motion to allow Region 8 to use this for capital application, if a project, if they I'm not telling them they have to, but if they say.
Madam Chair.
Is that the additional?
Yeah, Dawson.
Yeah, we would still fund the other project.
I can. Mr. Wynn.
Mr.
Hey,
Wynn?
Nancy,
Yeah,
Debbie Wynn has a comment. Just don't know if you saw that.
yeah. Is there any way you can put the audience on the screen, really? Debbie, go again.
Yeah. First of all, I'm probably the only one in this group that's been in the hospital in the last 2 weeks, and the shortage is incredible. So I got to know nurses. I was in there for 8 days, fairly seriously ill. I'm fine now on the mend. And it got me talking to a lot of the people in our region. I'm in Hampton Roads. I was in a hospital in Virginia Beach, a Centera hospital, blood clots. And the attitude of these people just was incredible to me. They should have been demoralized. They should have been complaining, and they were doing just the opposite. They were trying to help each other. They were working 12-hour shifts, 14 hours if they had to. Some of them were so burnt out they were about to become traveling nurses. There was a hiring of traveling nurses who make a lot more than they do. What I realized, and first of all, without a doubt, addressing this is worthy. There is no question in my mind about that. The only issue is, does Go Virginia address it? And to me, this is such a fundamental issue across the state, way, way beyond Go Virginia's resources, that in the same way that the governor addressed teachers, and one of the earlier speakers said, well, if we do this, then of course mental health and teachers come up. And they do. And so we're going to end up with no resources against the 5 categories that we identified in the very beginning to try and stimulate. And we seem to be, some seem to see us as the only resource. Well, I can already tell you, in our region, some of us are passing the hat to philanthropically put some money into this stuff and work with our workforce council to do it. This is that important. This is, all of us have family members that are at risk in these things. And so it's not a question of the worthiness of the project. It's profound and it's real and it's significant. The person that made the comment of a precedent is dead right. Once we do this, we are creating a precedent, and each region can then decide it's important to them and do it. And we weren't created with the kind of resources to address this. Now, maybe the state would say, well, go Virginia, we want you to administer a fund for healthcare and help every region do this. And because it's that important to us, and you've got the regions and so forth, and that would be fine. I just have a very, very difficult time. And once you also, by the way, change the precedent, for some of you, I don't know. I was involved in this in the very beginning and was involved with setting the policy and some of this. And we spent man weeks with economists trying to figure out the right way to do a narrow thing that could really make a difference in economic development and that we could be consistent in. But when we talk about allowing per capita and competitive funds, that too is a precedent.
Debbie, I'm sorry that we are glad you're participating, but we're sorry to hear that you have to spend time in the hospital and get firsthand knowledge of how difficult this problem is. So we have we have a motion on the table and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all those who would like to vote for the motion on the table, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Okay.
We can take votes from our two remote.
You can.
Mr. Stottlemyre,
Aye.
Mr. Wynn,
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next thing I'd like to present to you, and thanks you guys and ladies for that really wonderful discussion. I think this is going to be ongoing discussion. It's to talk a little bit about the Talent Pathways Initiative, particularly an update. So there was an item in the most recently signed budget that provided $2.5 million for Go Virginia for the state board to administer with the support of DHCD for planning grants, really to support the analysis of the workforce needs of regional businesses and identification of skills and training that is needed to help those firms remain competitive and in fact grow. I do want to draw your attention, we're on page 26 and 27 and 28 of the members of a work group that was convened to discuss the framework for this initiative. It included, in addition to DHCD, representatives from VEDP, representatives from the Virginia Department of Education, the State Council for Higher Education in Virginia, the Virginia Community College System, the Go Virginia Foundation, the Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the Virginia Business Higher Education Council, and the Virginia Association of Workforce Board Directors. That group was really designed in part to ensure that everyone knew what was happening here as it related to Go Virginia and this initiative's interest in really becoming, I think, what the architects hope is a North Star for future talent investments at the regional level and indeed perhaps at the state level as well. The guidelines presented are in draft for your consideration. I would like to add one suggested amendment, if I may, Madam Chair. On the bottom of page 28, there is some reference to the timeline. These resources may be made available. I'm always reminded that all of our grants are based on the availability of funds. And so I would not want the guidelines here to overstate the availability of funds at a point in time. So we would just recommend a small language change to make sure that we set the correct expectation about these funds. Understood. Thank you. And so basically this would provide up to $250,000 for each region. And the goal here would be to identify one or two would be my recommendation high impact, high opportunity industry clusters, and really to build on the growth and diversification plans that were submitted and approved back in December. Some of those plans went into great detail. This would allow each region to accomplish the things that we've laid out on 28 and faculty required deliverables. Industry coalitions. This is a demand-driven initiative to be really designed and guided by business and industry. Conduct what we think is important quantitative and qualitative analysis, a situational analysis of each industry sector, what their critical needs are and which of those needs are unmet, doing a gap analysis, similarly producing an asset map so that each region knows the programs, partners, resources that are available to develop talent in those critical need areas, and then also to recognize and identify path forward strategies for implementation. Now, we have had some good examples of this, and I will thank Nancy Gerken, who's here from Region 5 today. And I think the work that they've done with the maritime industry is really exemplifies what we think a good talent pathways initiative looks like. And of course, it looks like at the end, $11.6 million from the feds, a very refined plan, industry coalitions in place, all of their post-secondary and secondary institutions marching in lockstep, right? That's I think where we want everyone to go. And Region 5 has already got their next industry picked, I think. So, Madam Chair, that's what we would like for the board to consider today is adopting, if you will, the guidance for the town of Pathways Planning Initiative.
I know there's been a great deal of work thinking this through, and frankly, I feel some sense of urgency. This is something that we need to move quickly on, get a sense of what's going on, and then move into implementation. So, while not a huge amount of money, $2.5 million, spread across the state, it's a good accelerator for getting this work done quickly and getting it done through the regions going forward. Carol, thank you for putting together, you and your team putting together guidelines. Any comments, questions? If not, I'll accept a motion for approval of the guidelines. Second? Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Cody, can you call the roll?
Mr. Stottlemyre?
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen?
Aye.
Great, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to yield my remaining time in the director's report to the EDP of the Virginia Office of Education Economics. There is an information item, a memo about the Bio-Life Science Cluster Initiative. I'm happy to take any questions. Doug Wannerino is representing the Virginia State Board at the Deployment Fund.
So, Todd, would you like to introduce our speaker or given where you are, would you like me to do it?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Dave.
Go ahead, Nancy. I couldn't hear you. Yeah.
Special guest, and that's Heather McKay. Heather is the inaugural executive director of the Virginia Office of Education Economics, VOEE. And in this role, Heather is leading the VOEE's efforts to use research and data to inform program policy and partnerships in education and workforce across the Commonwealth of Law. Then considering and had some conversation about this before. Heather was the founding director of Education and Employment Research Center of the School of Management and Labor Relations at Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey. Her research at Rutgers focused primarily on education to work pathways. Heather will provide a general overview. Thank you. And we know our time limit, so we hope that there was a really thorough conversation within the short period of time.
Absolutely understood. Thank you, Chairwoman. Great to be here and be introduced to all of you today. I have my team with me here today, Pam Harder and Todd Oldham. Todd's going to come up and show you just in a little bit our beta supply demand dashboard. And I promise he will do that quickly, but we do want to give you a taste of what we are working on so that we can get some feedback from you all to learn about how we should change it before it becomes public. So Todd will be up in just a minute, but first I want to tell you these aren't looking so good. So I'm just going to move forward and talk. So first I'm going to tell you about the Virginia Office of Education Economics. We are a fairly new office. We were put in place by legislation in 2021, and we have two kind of main agendas. One is to use data and analysis to inform policy and practice in education and work, and the other one is to be a resource of information in education and work. And so really our main focus here is thinking about that connection between education and work and how we can move forward. We have been working on a variety of different tasks throughout the year, and Todd will show you one of those core deliverables today, but we have many other things that are moving forward, and I just want to mention a couple of those today. We have a couple of legislative agenda items that have moved forward, including talent pathways, which Sarah spoke to us about just a little while ago. BOE is involved in that work. We are also involved in work to look at STEM programming in the state. We are completing a new profile of what STEM occupations look like in Virginia, really expanding that list to think about middle skill workers, and we're very excited about that process. In addition to that, we are moving forward on taking a look at G3, and this is an annual job for us. We'll be looking at all of the programs that are involved in G3, taking a look at what's approved and looking to see if there are other things that should be included or maybe things that we don't need anymore on that list. And so we're excited to have a continual role in that G3 process. In addition to those legislative activities, we've also been partnering with folks across the state. So we've partnered recently with the Virginia Community College System to take a look at infrastructure jobs. And we are doing a large look at the infrastructure jobs and the needs across the Commonwealth, especially by region. So that's been really exciting and interesting and a wonderful partnership. In addition to that, we are starting what we are calling the Skills Initiative for Virginia. And thanks to Secretary Merrick's support of this and also Secretary Slater's support, we are able to move forward with this really exciting body of work where we are planning to develop 2 large data sets to look at skills in Virginia. One of those data sets is going to follow 8 years of graduates from Virginia universities and colleges through social media. And the goal of this is to begin to collect information on the occupations those people have. Right now, we have very little information about what happens to our graduates. What are the jobs they take? What do they do after they leave those classrooms? So we're trying to put a Band-Aid on that problem by collecting some information from their LinkedIn profiles and other places. And so I hope after this work is done, which it should be completed by December, we will have a really nice picture of what about 40% of the graduates in Virginia are doing with their degrees and how they are moving forward. And that will help us to better understand what to invest in and also what career trajectories actually look like, right? We have this big black box of liberal arts degrees, but those people are getting jobs and going someplace, and we should find out what they're doing. So that will really help us move forward with our research. The other work that we're doing with that skills initiative is that we are pulling together a database that is going to begin to gather information about the skills and competencies students are learning in educational programs in Virginia. So in degree programs, we want to collect the variety of different skills students learn in the classroom along their pathways so that we can begin to think about how those skills relate to the labor market, what employers are asking for, and do these skills align. We think this data set will be really important in creating educational programming. Also for employers to begin to think beyond their typical hires, right, to folks who might have skills that are similar or aligned. And so we're really excited about the prospect of that project. I want today to be able to show you one of our core deliverables. So I'm going to let Todd Oldham come up now and show you our supply demand dashboard. I just want to let you all know and sort of say this out loud that this is a beta. We are in process of making this a real product, and we hope for this to be a public product by winter of this year. And right now we are gathering feedback. So we hope that this group will give us good feedback, give us good information to go back, make some changes, and make this a public and available tool for Virginians, particularly policymakers, practitioners, people like yourselves.
Okay, what am I? Oh, there you go. Sorry, I'm a Mac guy, some other ones. Well, good afternoon. This is, as Heather was saying, is our beta. It truly is a beta, but we have it at a point where we're beginning to get feedback on it. This is intended actually to be not just a dashboard, but actually to function. It's a dashboard that will function in a way that it actually almost acts as an application. So what it's intended to do is to be a place certainly where we could share our analyses as we're doing them. As Heather mentioned, we're doing a lot of analytical work that relates to grouping occupations across the state and then having a set of analysis that follows it. And so rather than to do those offline, we realize that we can put those into a dashboard, and once they're programmed, they can stay there in perpetuity, be updated for folks to consume. And so with this site, essentially it's based on two filters. One would be the drop down for the occupational groups that we're loading into the tool. For purposes of this demonstration, we're just going to use computer science. And then we have the other piece is regionality. And so I should mention one of the other dynamics or designs for this tool is for it to be highly customizable to the different use cases and the different groups around the state. So if the folks are a workforce board and they want to look at the labor market data by LWA, or if they're Go Virginia focused, or whether they're a superintendent district, the idea is over time we're going to have the ability for the user to select on those and then look at the world through their lens versus one static lens. For purposes of this demonstration, we're going to use the Go Virginia regionality, which obviously you're all familiar with. When we do that, we will get a map that comes up that's already regionalized for the user. In this case, we can select then region 4 because we're interested in that data. So it's going to be a little bit slower because we're not in a production site. Oops, let's see. This should regionalize. There we go. So then it contextualizes. We're trying to really build off the visualization here so the person knows state level, regional level, and the constituents level that make up the region. So in this case, we obviously have the counties and the independent cities and such that would make up any of these regions. So once that occurs, we are going to go ahead and just look at, so how does this tool work? It basically is based on mapping program completions to average annual openings. In this case, the computer science, we are, in this particular case, this won't be all the time, we're defaulting to the NCES mappings. So if you're not familiar with that, that's where the National Center of Education Statistics has worked with the BLS. Yeah.
Who's the audience for that?
Yeah, good point. The audience for this app are actually decision makers around workforce dynamics, so workforce boards, potentially economic development organizations, community colleges, institutions. It's for decision makers. It's not intended really for a career changer, even though the data that's within this could be used for that, but that's not the purpose of the tool at this point.
How about employers?
Employers could definitely use this tool.
Okay.
Yeah.
The concern I have is that if an employer is thinking of expanding and they go to this and they see there's a huge lack of supply, what will they do? How will that factor into their plan?
Right. That's so that is when you disclose supply and demand, that is potentially, in a lot of cases around the country, there's a dearth of workers. So if you're measuring the production of the worker against the demand, that's potentially one of the things that you would see is the percent of adequacy, which is the measure we call that, won't be 100%. It'll be probably, it could be 30%, 50%, 60%. So there is a lot of the work that we'll need to do on this. This is a prototype. This is not intended, to be consumed yet. Is a lot of narrative and a lot of context put within the data.
Could you break for just one
Yeah, I'm
second?
gonna share
I
it.
just wanted to share this on the, we don't have it set up to share on Google Meet, and I think there may be some folks in the audience that are interested.
Yeah, and Section America, I think the other things I to think about here in terms of business and business consuming this, right? A business is very interesting, but you can create information. Is that it's having information, right? It can be challenging, but it can also be an important starter for conversations around solutions and policy ideas to move forward with those companies.
students. And so I think, we can have longer conversations with the EDP as well, which is of course our home, to have how to move forward with that structure and reality, right? The labor force isn't always perfect for a place, but there are lots of things we can do in terms of workforce development to move things forward.
I think Mr. Lynn, Debbie had his hand up and wanted to make a comment. You can confirm that?
Yeah. A couple of comments. One, I'm delighted you all are starting to do this. It's always been my hope when we've been talking about clusters that you all would be the keeper of the data for our clusters as we go forward. That way we'll get a semblance of commonality, we can share best practices, all that sort of stuff. So I hope as we go forward with this, we can do that. I do want to say though, for some of us that have been working on these talent pathways for a while, it's the front end that's the problem. We've got a lot of solutions, even though they're complicated, even though we don't have the collaboration and so forth. We need more bodies to be willing to go into these things where there is a need. And that's going to take some real work. Of course, data analytics is going to drive us, but I would also say that, again, this is just my CEO prior experience. If we don't focus on the priority clusters and get them driving, taking a holistic approach of all of the workforce isn't going to get us very far because we can't deal with it. We've got to have something that we can wrap our arms around, that people are enthusiastic about, where there's education and workforce and business joining together to do these things. So I think that, and I've had these conversations with Jason a couple of times, that I think he would agree in general with this. So I hope that as you evolve, you can both have your policy-driven stuff, but also your more narrow-driven in the clusters that can lead to action.
I think that's a great point. And I think we have plans along those lines to think about clusters, and you'll see some occupational looks here. I would also note one activity that I did not talk about in my comments earlier that we are working on, but I think will feed into this very well, is that we have partnered, thanks again to Secretary Merrick, Secretary Slater, and Secretary Gadara, with the OECD to do a study starting next month on career navigation in Virginia. And so we'll be looking at the practices that Virginia does in terms of career navigation with students in high school. We believe that these practices can be improved, and we're really excited to be working with the OECD, which has done the first really high quality longitudinal study around the globe of career navigation. We can do more, certainly, to think about how to entice students in K-12 to get into these careers of need. And so I think that's going to be some important work that comes out of our shop. And next steps with that project will be to think about how we can use those tools as well with adults. And so we hope to provide research and information to you all so that policymakers and decision makers around the state can use that to guide good decision making in these areas. So just another addition.
Let me ask you one follow-on question on that. Again, a bunch of us have been talking about out-migration. We don't have the data. Are you all going to work on that data so that we can actually get down to cause and effect and act on it?
Migration is a challenge. Migration data is a huge challenge in this state and in states around the country. Before coming here at Rutgers, I was the evaluator of a multi-state longitudinal data exchange in the West. It's a difficult thing to look at. We are in Virginia, thanks to folks at Chev and Secretary Gadara, working on some really high quality efforts to begin doing data sharing. And in addition to that, we are thinking about some of these other kind of band-aids on the problem, right? The skills initiative that I just talked about will help give us some information on possible migration of folks through those social media profiles. So location is one of the things that we're beginning to look at. But this is a continual challenge, and we really do need to make data sharing agreements between states in order for us to better understand migration. Those efforts are underway across the country. Virginia is participating in them, but it's a while to come, I think, still to get really good data on migration.
And Heather, as you were saying, the colleges aren't keeping information on where their alumni go, but we have to actually go and chase that out through the state of
Colleges do collect information on their own alumni, and they have that, but I don't believe that the state has a full and comprehensive data set on migration. So institutions may have their own data that they collect on their alumni, but what we were talking about here is some state solutions at the state level to think about where folks have gone. And we think our data set actually might give institutions some information as well about their own graduates, right? They do their own sleuthing and collect information, but we'll have this alternate view. There's a variety of ways to sort of get this picture. Of course, you know, we can also make enhancements to data systems here in Virginia as well. And hopefully though we can play a role in that moving forward.
Yeah, I just think this will be so informative. I mean, as Debbie says, we don't really know why people are moving, but in the short term, we want to recruit some of them back. And we're even looking at policy incentives of how do you do that? Are there ways to get both Virginia alumni to come back to Virginia?
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting.
Yeah, and we'll be happy to participate in that. And we are, we were tasked by the General Assembly to do a study on migration, being led by Pam Harder, who just left actually, and myself, as well as a contractor. We're looking at different programs that other states have put into place about attracting talent from out of state. So we'll be sending that into the legislature soon.
We spend all this money educating farmers, and then we tell them they gotta leave. The minute they get their degree, they're gone. They say, you know, we love the state, and we can't. I know Virginia's got nothing to do with that. But Virginia needs to put you on that.
I couldn't agree with you more. As a former owner of a software company, a large one, yes, we very much wanted computer scientists to stay in Virginia.
In China and other countries say, you know, why do we have to go to universities? They do it in Virginia, they do it in the United States, and then we're guaranteed that they're coming back.
Completely agree.
I think Todd's got a couple more stages to walk through. Do you want to show a few more things,
I'll just show
or just do
very
folks
quickly.
feel pretty good about this?
I mean, essentially, I won't go through all this. I know we're short on time, but there's essentially the supply demand dashboard itself looks something like this. There's a way to go really deep into the data, or we're partnering very closely with Chev, so I won't click on this, but you can see a matrix to see the production of the entire state, and then you can begin to filter on it if you want to go down very deeply within certain scenarios. Here's an example of it. You can pivot through this. So this is something that we're intending to do into designing this, is to have layers to it so folks can go as deep as they wish to go, but not have to see a lot of data if they don't, in fact, want to consume it. The one piece I would like to show, though, just to wrap up, would be the graduate UI data. So I know we talk a lot about understanding pathways, understanding the return of investment and where folks are going. Our goal in this tool is to be able to show the UI data, so the students that have graduated from these programs that came from institutions within the region itself, to begin to show that relative to the occupations that they're intended to go into. And the project that Heather mentioned, which is the social profiles, will allow us to isolate within the Chev data itself. I apologize, that's a little slow loading here. It will actually show yeah, the network a little slow. But what it will actually allow us to do is to factor the time in that it takes an individual to go up the career. 1 second. Apologize for that.
Like you said, this is some beta testing right now, so we can't go on the website and start playing around with this ourselves yet.
Not yet. We're going to be in a production stage, which a lot of this stuff won't be happening the way it is now. And when we're at that point, and we'll have dynamic data. Right now, the data, some of it is mocked up and such, just to show the concept. We'd be able to send the link out. You'd be able to explore it. It'll also be a little bit. There'll be more analytics within it that you could look at.
And do you have to have permission to do that? So you send a link, or can it come to your website once it's available and start using it?
Will be, it depends on how we deploy it. We'll likely deploy it probably publicly, so, you know, without advertising it too much, but we would send the link out probably to Sarah, and then she could disseminate it. Yeah.
So we'll be happy to share it with you. If anybody would like a walkthrough of this individually or in a group, absolutely, we'd be very happy to do that.
Just one more quick question. I highly recommend you, very promising. As you're developing this, do you have some beta testers and users who are helping you with the UI, user interface, and things like that?
We are absolutely planning on that. Right now, we are getting feedback from stakeholders like yourselves. So that's the stage that we're in now as we develop the production site, which is our next step. In the next couple of months, we will certainly have some resources. Thank you so much.
Very exciting.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you all very much. Any other questions or comments? Sarah, do you have anything else you want to add?
No, thank you very.
So we started our meeting today, and thank you all for your attention and sticking with us. We started with some accolades, and it was pretty exciting to hear about the grants and so on. Well, I'm going to end with another piece of good news, in case you have not heard. The GOVA Virginia is being recognized by the International Economic Development Council with the Excellence in Economic Development Award. This is a really big deal. So really excited. And GOVA Virginia was awarded this highest honor for its category in regional collaboration. They worked so hard. It's an exceptional accomplishment. I want to especially thank Sarah for her leadership. Really remarkable, and really to all of you for your leadership and your vision and your dedication throughout the board service, through our regional councils. So pretty exciting. Next week, Sarah will go and accept the award, but we get to have cake. We're internationally known. Like to amplify this.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I am going to Oklahoma City.
You're expecting
No, the conference, content was fantastic. I'm really excited to go and obviously, represent the program and at DHCD and everybody who's been so involved in doing this. So in terms of how do we amplify, they'd like for us to hold a public announcement until after the award ceremony. This is a competitive peer review that they'll be providing us with some framework for a press release. But Secretary Merrick, I appreciate you, and I would like our PR team to go ahead and start working with the governor's comms team to make sure we've got something teed up, pretty quickly as soon as we can make it public. So it's a very nice accomplishment. Again, a relatively young economic development program. I will share, I submitted this last year, the fact that we didn't have cake last year. Just again, let you know, but we had so many more really positive things to say about the program and its impact. And I think that at the end of the day is what was compelling for the judges. This is a peer review board.
We weren't kidding about cake. There is cake right outside the door. And our next meeting is Tuesday, December 13th. Our meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Yeah, very exciting.
I sent you an email.
You go ahead. Yeah.